It is 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, and you drop your bag by the door and your dog launches off the couch like a furry missile, tail whipping, body curving into a C shape, that high whine cutting through the hallway. You scratch behind the ears for 3 seconds, say something soft, and move toward the kitchen, and in that moment you believe you just confirmed something. Your dog is happy you're doing a good job, the tail told you so. Here is what no one mentions: that tail was already wagging before you turn the key. It wags for the delivery driver. It wags when you pick up the leash, when you open the fridge, when a squirrel crosses the window at the wrong speed. The wag isn't a lie, but it isn't the evidence you think it is. A wagging tail measures arousal, not welfare. It tells you something is happening in your dog's nervous system. It doesn't tell you whether that something is joy, anxiety, overstimulation, or desperate relief. That the long silence finally broke. You've been reading the highlights reel and calling it the whole story. The zoomies after a bath, the dinnertime dance, the full body wiggle at the door. Those moments are genuine, but a dog can have all of them and still carry a nervous system that never fully settles. A body that sleeps shallow. A mind that startles too fast and recovers too slow. The difference between a dog who experiences happy moments and a dog whose life is structurally neurologically good is not something you catch in the obvious signals. It lives in the quiet, in what happens when nothing is happening. The sounds you've been filtering out as background noise, and in the one behavior that looks at first glance like your dog wants nothing to do with. You researchers have spent the last 2 decades isolating these markers. Not the flashy ones, the ones hidden in sleep architecture, in breathing patterns, during play, and how a dog's body responds to brief surprise. And the first one starts where you are least likely to be watching. 3 hours after you have both gone still. When your dog's paws begin to twitch, and a muffled bark slips out from somewhere deep inside a dream. Here is what most people never consider. Your dog doesn't experience a knock at the door the way you do. You hear a sound and assign it meaning through language, context, memory. Your dog's brain skips all of that. The auditory signal hits the thalamus, gets routed to the amygdala. In roughly 12 milliseconds, a threat or safe verdict is issued, before the conscious brain even finishes processing pitch. That split-second freeze or that easy trot toward the door isn't personality. It is a cumulative neural ledger. Every safe outcome and every frightening one your dog has ever logged, compressed into a single autonomic reflex. Researchers at the University of Bristol built an elegant test around this. They taught dogs that a bowl on the left always contains food, a bowl on the right is always empty. Then they placed bowls at ambiguous midpoints. Dogs whose HPA axis runs cool, whose cortisol baseline sits low and steady, approached those uncertain bowls quickly, as though the world probably had something good waiting. Dogs carrying higher allostatic load hesitated. Some refused to move at all. The study calls it judgment bias. But what it really measures is how many times the sympathetic nervous system has fired, without a matching safety signal to bring it back down. Now think about your dog's entire yesterday. Not what they did, but how many distinct neural states they move through. Deep sniffing activates the parasympathetic branch, lowers heart rate, lengthens exhale, genuine play triggers that loose, breathy pant, the one people mistake for overheating, which only appears when the vagus nerve is toned, and the body feels unthreatened enough to be loud and inefficient, lying in a patch of sun with a soft belly. Exposed isn't laziness. It is a dog whose threat detection circuitry has fully powered down. A dog stuck in a narrow loop. Sleep, wait, brief activation, crash, isn't low maintenance. That is a nervous system running on a single rail, conserving energy because the predictive model says nothing new is safe enough to explore. Behavioral diversity, the number of genuinely different states your dog cycles through in a day, is a direct readout of how much bandwidth their nervous system is left after accounting for vigilance. So when your dog trots towards something unfamiliar, with loose shoulders and a soft mouth, that isn't bravery. That is thousands of resolved stress cycles stacked into a single prediction. This world tends to deliver safety, and that prediction didn't come from nowhere. Here is what your nervous system actually registers. When your dog shakes off a loud noise in 8 seconds and curls back into sleep, your hypothalamus receives a signal it rarely gets from human relationships. Safety confirmed without negotiation, no verbal reassurance required, no emotional labor exchanged, just a body returning to baseline in front of you, and your own HPA axis quietly following suit. That recovery speed isn't personality, it is a cortisol readout. Parnam and colleagues validated this across more than 1,000 dogs in 2023. The metric they isolated was allostatic load, the cumulative residue of stress that never fully cleared. When that load sits low, the adrenal cortex releases a short, clean pulse of cortisol during a startle, and the parasympathetic branch reasserts steady signal within seconds. The vagus nerve fires, heart rate drops, breathing lengthens. The dog doesn't decide to be brave, its biology simply has enough margin to return. Now reverse the lens onto your own body. You watch that Recovery happen on the kitchen floor after a pan crashes. And something in your chest loosens before you consciously register why. That is social buffering. Documented in correlation research since the early 2000s. Your mirror neuron network reads the dog's rapid deceleration and borrows it. And when that same dog later stands up, walks to a quiet corner, and lies down without checking your face first, your amygdala receives a second data point. No threat detected. In separation, the dog's proprioceptive system chose stillness in another room, because its internal model predicts that safety persists beyond line of sight. 3 conditions converge simultaneously for that to happen: low tonic cortisol, secure attachment representation, and perceived autonomy. So the flinch that resolves in seconds, and the voluntary retreat to another room aren't separate signals. They're 2 expressions of the same underlying variable, a nervous system carrying low enough debt to afford both elasticity and independence. And every time you witness either one without intervening, your own system logs a quiet entry: the world for this moment is solvent. So here is the part no one says out loud. You watched your dog startle at that slam door last Tuesday, and instead of bouncing back in 8 seconds, she paced the hallway for 10 minutes. Your stomach dropped, you thought. I did this, the tension I carry. Through the front door, it leaked into her system. And now she can't recover the way a thriving dog should. That guilt landed fast because your brain is wired to claim responsibility for the creatures in your care, but the biology tells a different story. Your prefrontal cortex processes emotional data through language, narrative, and self-referential loops. Her amygdala processes it through scent concentration, barometric microshifts, and the vibration frequency of your footsteps on the floor. You're running 2 entirely separate operating systems. When those systems miscommunicate, it isn't negligence, it is physics. A 2023 study using the Lincoln Canine Adaptability and Resilience scale measured over 1,000 dogs and found that recovery speed correlates with cumulative allostatic load, not with owner perfection, not with how many enrichment puzzles you bought, not with whether you left the radio on. The parasympathetic rebound after a startle is governed by her own nervous systems history, her genetics, her early socialization window, her breed-specific stress architecture. You're one variable in a system with dozens, and here is what matters most: the fact that you noticed the pacing, that you counted the minutes, that your chest tightened watching her scan the room. That isn't evidence of failure, that is correlation already happening. Your attention is the first thread of the bridge between her system and yours. You didn't break her, you're already reading her in the only language your biology allows. And that quiet noticing, that willingness to look closer, is exactly the thing that lets what comes next actually work. So here is what comes next, and it is smaller than you think tonight. When you get home and your dog meets you at the door, don't reach down immediately, don't narrate, just lower yourself to the floor. Sit there and wait 2 minutes, maybe 3. That is it. No commands, no agenda, no performance of being a good owner. Just your body closer to theirs. Doing nothing. What happens in those 2 or 3 minutes isn't training, it is correlation. Your breathing slows because you're no longer standing in the posture of someone who has somewhere else to be. Your dog's respiratory rate will mirror that shift. A 2022 study out of Linköping University confirmed this. Bidirectional synchrony. When a human's cortisol drops, the dog in proximity drops with them. You aren't fixing your dog, 2 nervous systems are simply finding the same rhythm, because the distance between them finally closed enough to allow it. Pay attention to what you feel at the 90-second mark. Most people report their shoulders dropping without deciding to drop them. The mental rehearsal of tomorrow's tasks briefly stops. The rumination loop that ran the entire drive home just loses its signal for a moment. That is your vagus nerve doing what it does when the body receives a cue that nothing needs to be managed right now. If this kind of pet interaction brings you back into your body, it isn't weakness. It is your nervous system recognizing a form of connection that lets it recover without performing. Try it tonight, then come back and tell me in the comments, what did you notice first? Your shoulders dropping, your breathing changing, or your dog settling before you did? I want to know which signal arrived first, because the answer tells you something about whose nervous system is actually leading the conversation. Tonight, do one restorative thing first. Sit on the floor for 2 or 3 minutes. Notice whether your breath gets longer. Notice whether your shoulders start to drop. And notice how quickly the rumination begins to break. This is for your recovery, not a performance review.